pre the category theory ideas that we talked about earlier, there's a much simpler question that one could ask, which is, if I have a large system of things, okay, like maybe, a book, your favorite book,
let's go.
Moby Dick.
Sure, Moby Dick, why not?
Or whatever, right? Or maybe even something simpler like,
a Calvin and Hobbes comic strip.
Oh, I love Calvin and Hobbes.
Who does
yes.
it?
Calvin
I could
and
never
Hobbes.
like someone if they didn't like Calvin and Hobbes.
Exactly, I know, right? Okay, but you have like some system of things, and they're like interacting with each other. I don't know. Maybe these are words in English, and the meaning or the first word in your favorite book, or a long joke correlates to the last word, like the punchline of the joke or the final conclusion in your book. Like even these things are spaced far apart. They still have meaning. They're closely related. Anyway, so you have like the system of interacting stuff. Maybe there's some correlations, and you might want to know, hey, if I like zoom into a little piece of it, like maybe I have a sentence, maybe we're reading a Calvin and Hobbes comic, and Calvin, says something to Hobbes about his red fire truck. Oh, there's my example again. Okay, I can't get away from it. Right? So I like zoom into a little piece. Like there's this long dialogue, but in it there's this one phrase, or maybe like one sentence in a longer dialogue. I'd like to know, how does that small thing interact with this larger environment? Okay. In math, we have this idea of marginalization. Like if I have a probability distribution, on two things, I can kind of close my eye to one half and like marginalize over it, and now I have probabilities on this one. This is marginal probability. Classically, when you do this, you have lost information about this complementary subsystem. Like marginal probability doesn't know about the thing you integrated out. Turns out in quantum physics and linear algebra, there's an analogous way to do that. It actually retains information about all of the stuff that you ignored. And it turns out that information tells you a lot about this system that you're working with. And you can actually kind of build back up what you started with in a better way that I'm totally being vague and nobody understands what I'm talking about at this point.
I think anyone has to acknowledge that in a podcast medium, there is a struggle for describing these things very literally, because it's intrinsically visual and symbolic. And I guess maybe in this context, one of the examples that you had in your thesis was if you have like adjective noun phrases. Like you've got not just your red fire truck, but also your green apple and things like that. You can have a distribution of all these phrases, and you could say, just what's the likelihood of seeing a particular adjective, like red, and ask about the distribution of those. Or you could ask about what's the probability of seeing all the different nouns. And then somehow each time you limit your view there, you forget everything about the adjectives when you're just looking at the nouns. You forget everything about the nouns when you're looking at the adjectives. But I don't know, there's these really elegant constructions in quantum mechanics and quantum information whereby you shift your perspective, but without losing anything, which is, I'd never really thought about that as an application to probability. It was just one of those things that happens in quantum information. You say, I guess, this is an elegant way of doing it. But the thought of then applying that to anything else, like language, personally, I found that a little bit mind-blowing, that it's a very clever bridging between two seemingly unrelated sets of ideas.
Yeah, you just summarized the work brilliantly. Thank you. I was struggling, and you brought us back home. So listener, just listen to what Grant said. Summarize my thesis. Well, thank you.
Well, literally, I was reading it this morning, so I think honestly, it's fresher in my mind than it might be in yours.
Yeah, I was like, what did I write a year ago? No, that was great. Thank you.
So, talk to me a little bit about the blog, Mathema, and what made you start it, and then if you had goals with it, whether or not you felt like those goals were achieved.
Yeah, so I started Mathema in 2015, in February of that year, which was my second semester of graduate school. And I started the blog really...
Turn that podcast off. Oh, that is like the run that I wanted. Like it's still obviously very far from perfect. I mean, another 7 seconds to save just on my summer best so far. Oh man, I don't even remember what happened in that run because it's too busy listening to the podcast. But I think that'll be the run that I keep for the Genocide %. That's the one I'm happy with.